2, which is Servant Leadership Anchor 2, the weekly one-on-one coaching session.
Yep.
And so let's get to it. Timely and schedule needs to be routine and prioritized, or you can't win the game, and the player you can't grow. So what do you mean by that?
So you have to have a process and a routine. It's got to be a non-negotiable. So, if you decide you're doing them weekly, they go in your calendar and your employee's calendar weekly on the same day at the same time, and you both agree upon when you can fit that in your schedule. And you try and stick to that unless there's an absolute emergency. So you got to anchor it down in a process. Because if you say, oh, we'll have regular one-on-ones, inevitably something else takes priority. So you sit with the team member, you say, what's the best date for you? What's the best time? Okay, these are usually my good days. Friday afternoons are great, between 3 and 5. Kind of everything's settling down. It'd be great to sit down for an hour or half an hour with you every week and talk about where you're at. So put it in a process, put it in the calendar, hold it like you would a department meeting.
So how often should these things be?
Again, that's scope and size, but I would tell you weekly is ideal. Because you're trusting that you're going to have some connection with your team member. You're going to give guidance. You're going to give support. You're going to give ideas. You're going to give recognition. You're going to confirm. But then you're letting them go do their thing for 5 business days. Letting them go do their thing for 10 business days, depending on the employee, is okay. But having someone go a month without having access to you in a formal, uninterrupted setting, which is dedicated to them, for me is a little too long. So I would say you want to be doing these weekly. I've always done them weekly. And the challenge becomes, okay, well, I'm the president or the CEO. How do I meet with 6 VPs and 14 directors? And no, you don't. You meet with your 6 VPs every week, and you train your VPs on how to be great at servant leadership, so they're meeting with their 14 directors. And the training goes down to the 14 directdirectors, so they're training the 28 managers, and the 28 managers perform the same behaviors, so the 144 employees are being developed. Because it's got to cascade all the way through the organization, or it falls apart.
So I don't quite get that. If you have gaps, it's funny you should say that, because I was talking to, I remember they introduced performance reviews where I was working at the Spectator, and I said to my boss, who reviews you? And he said, well, if I don't, if they don't like me, they don't keep me. And that was not an answer. You kind of have to know that there's an accountability all the way up the line, right?
Yeah, and keep in mind, we're talking about coaching sessions now. We're not talking about performance review. We're not talking about employee. This is me giving you my time, my support, my guidance, my thoughts where you need them, my opportunity to recognize what you're doing, your opportunity to ask me for questions, my opportunity to create some learning gaps and help you understand how to close them. This is about you and I weekly. It's not about you're doing a good job or a bad job. We may look at measurables, but this is about development on a weekly basis and ensuring I'm there for you to allow you to grow. And ensure I'm giving you feedback that's specific and value-based, so you know how to go and tackle the following week.
Gotcha. Guiding, supporting versus directing. Identify the gaps and recognize the strengths. The team can't own the journey. The team can own the journey. It develops behaviors that stick and get adopted. Don't tell, inquire, guide, support, and confirm. So this speaks to one of the very basics of human nature. Show and don't tell.
Yeah, and it's diagnosing before you decide what to do. So let me give you I look at leadership as, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say this, because everyone in the sales world is probably cringing, sales and marketing. But I also look at it like a funnel, like they do in sales and marketing.
Sure.
And I draw the equivalent that says, if you look at the top of the funnel as far as development goes, the large majority of organizations are not having regular communication with their employees. That is coaching driven. Okay. Now you get a little narrow and you get the organizations who are. Well, they're not doing it weekly. They're maybe doing it monthly. Now you get a little bit narrower and you get the ones that are doing it weekly. But they're directive, not inquiry driven. So it's like, here's what you do. I need you to get this done this week. Don't forget to do this. Don't forget to do this and do that. Okay, goodbye. And then you get even further down the funnel and you get the leadership style that says, hey, let's talk about last week. Tell me about your wins. Okay, what do you think caused that success? Okay, if I was there watching you last week, where would you have wanted some help? Where could I have supported you? Okay, and what would you do differently? And what are your thoughts on that? Okay, let's talk now about your metrics. You missed 3 of your 4 KPIs. Tell me what's going on. Well, I'm struggling in average sale. I'm struggling in upgrades. I'm struggling in units sold. Okay, why do you think that's the case? Talk to me about your behaviors. Which ones do you think you're missing? Where do you think you need some help? And those are guiding conversations, not directing. The directing conversation would say, you missed 3 of your core 4 KPIs. Go raise your average sale. Go get your units and get your average transaction up, or you're gone. And you're going to do that by greeting every customer who walks in the door within 60 seconds. Okay, goodbye. The employee can't learn and they can't identify where they need the help, so you can't really support them to help them get to where they're trying to get for both of you. And those are guiding conversations, and they're usually led through inquiry versus advocacy versus directive. But hey, if you're there, you're already farther ahead than most of the funnel that isn't coaching in the first place. But why not go that next level and let your employee come along that learning journey?
And the answer is going to be, the answer is going to be because I don't have time.
Right, because you're not prioritizing the right things. That is the number one reason leaders don't coach. They don't have time. Well, what do they have time for? Well, they have time to look at one more financial report. They have time to set up one more meeting with an external contact. They have time to go through one more pitch deck. They have time to look at their financial results for the month one more time. Well, all those things that they're doing are important, but who's driving the result? At the end of the day, who really drives the result of the organization? It's not the leader. It's the employee who's face-to-face with the customer. And we seem to prioritize them last. And that's why they don't have time.
Okay. Balance the inquiry versus advocacy approach to skills development. Open-ended questions and cover the behaviors that are causing success and the gaps that are causing deficiencies. Inquire to get to the root problem and see if the team member can find their way through, advocate for their solution, or advocate when they are stuck. So this, again, kind of goes back to the hardest thing that we do is when we know what the answer, we think we know what the answer is. And it's an almost undeniably powerful, irresistible powerful thing to say, I know what your problem is, and here it is.
Yeah, and we come from a position of serving them. There's no one who gives an employee an answer that doesn't want to see them do well.
Right.
That's the natural human reaction of, oh, okay, I heard you, do this. Here's the Band-Aid, go ahead. And what they don't uncover is they don't ask enough questions, and they don't inquire, and they don't let the employee own the problem while supporting them through the dialogue. As the employee repeats the behavior, but they don't understand why. So they're losing all the thinking and learning that they can apply to the next situation. And the reason it's, when people hear me talk about inquiry versus advocacy, they think all I want is open-ended questions and you never get to share your experience or your knowledge. No, you can advocate if the employee's gone through those questions and they've found the solution. You're going to leave them feeling confident by advocating that they've found the way and you agree with them, and you're going to build their confidence on the behaviors that they've uncovered and let them go. Or you're going to see that they're still stuck after that journey, and you're going to advocate a solution to say, hey, listen, I can see you're stuck, and I know you need an answer on this exact project, and I want to take you down the learning cycle, and we'll see how you do with this. But what if you do A, B, or C? What are your thoughts on that? And you're going to advocate a solution so they may be successful in the immediate term, but in the longer term, you want to continue to manage inquiry where possible and advocate that they have found the solution on their own. That's how people learn and grow, is they figure it out how to do it. What we need is people to guide us to that answer.
Look for you know what's so funny, because I don't know whether you experienced that with your kids, but my daughters will call their mom, right? They don't want an answer. They do not. So I've stepped in and I've said, well, why don't you do this and this and this? And they just say, let me talk to mom. They don't want an answer. They want to work through it.
Yeah, because it's how we understand things, and quite frankly, kids and adults, as we learn, we want to own that we figured it out. That's where the human behavior goes, oh, I figured that out. Oh, I get it now. I got there. I'm glad so-and-so gave me the opportunity to learn that versus telling me. I remember when I was started in construction, and I had never seen an agreement of purchase and sale before, Mike, and it was like, here's a guy who sold t-shirts and beer at MLSC or a retail, right? And here's this big dense contract on these $1 million purchases. And I remember being like, oh my God, I got to figure this out. And I had to go dive deep and learn it. But as I was going through that industry, more and more stuff like that showed up. And one of the things from a financial perspective, as I went from a VP to a president, so a VP of sales, I can figure stuff out myself, and marketing have done that, and operations at MLSE. But the financial side of the business was a big gap for me. I mean, I could read a P&L front and back. I knew KPIs, but in the construction world of doing a deal and financial stacking and the waterfall and all these terms of like really how they figure out how they're going to get the money to do a project and who's partnering with them and how much is equity and how much is debt. Those are all things that I wanted to learn. And I worked for a guy named Sean Keeper at Dunsire, who was the first guy to actually teach me. And I had people before tell me this is what it means, but Sean taught me. Like he literally put it on paper and said, okay, how do you think we put a land deal together, Mark? And I was like, well, the cost of the land, you either got to have it yourself or you got to go to a bank and you got to borrow it. Well, hold on, there's a whole thing around cost to borrow and repayment terms and equity and debt. And so here's how you have to look at it. And what do you think, Mark? Who could be the players? Oh, and where do you think the most expensive place to buy would be? Oh, and based on this person coming in with they're getting this much money, who do you think's getting their money first? And when do you think we get paid? And how do you think this? And Sean Keeper, although wouldn't tell you philosophically that he's a guy who's like a servant leader, absolutely demonstrates servant leadership for me in coaching there. He helped guide me to the answer. And I came out of it going, hey, wait a second, this isn't as intimidating as I thought. And I could structure a land deal tomorrow if I wanted to. Now, the problem with structuring a land deal if I wanted to, I don't have $50 to rub together, let alone 5 million. But I learned the journey, and that's the best way I could explain what inquiry versus advocacy is, because it kept asking, well, what do you know about it? What have you learned? Okay, what does your gut tell you? How would you approach this? He could have told me right from the beginning, listen, you come in, you come in on a deal in either equity or debt or both, and here's the cost to borrow from a B lender versus an A lender, and this is how you minimize the money that you put in, but this is how it impacts your return, and here's when you're going to see the money on this deal, and here's an example of where we structured a deal with a landowner here. Could have easily have done that, but he knew as a president I had to learn that skill. Because I was transparent before I took the job that I hadn't done that. And he just did a really good job of inquiring and then advocating. So the last part of that, Mike, is he kind of said, you got it now. That's exactly how we look at deals in this organization. Now I want you to go find me some partners. And I want you to structure it under scenario A, B, and C. And then we started to have meetings. We started bringing people with capital. And we started trying to structure some deals. But he advocated that I then had gone down that journey of learning. And here, Mark, feel comfortable and confident moving forward in this way for our organization. I've worked for other builders where that's not the way they stack their capital because they have different levels of resource and different partnerships. Long story short, was he did a really good job taking me across the learning. And he said, here, you've got it now. Yep, you're bang on. Now go. That's the advocacy part.
Look for nonverbal clues. Beware of the 93-7 rule and break through the resistance or silence to grow.
Yeah.
Growth is a partnership. Don't let each other off the hook. Have a difficult conversation to grow. Oh, well, there's so many questions here. Why don't you just shoot from the hip on this? What's the 93-7 rule? Yeah,
and it might even be 92-8. I didn't come up with it. It's out there, and it's about how human beings understand messaging. And 92 or 93%, we'll have to do some research on that. I learned this at TELUS 20 years ago. They'd literally put you in a room doing these coaching skills, film you doing a role play, and show it back to you and say, did you see, did you see, did you see? Watch the body language. How would you react? What would you do differently? Blah, blah, all these things. I shouldn't say blah, blah, blah. It was highly impactful. But it was that, we receive 8% of a message or 7, and I think it's 92.8 now that I think about it, not 93.7, based on the words. Okay, that's the impact of that message in our brain. 92 to 93% of the message is how the message giver carries their body and the tone of the message. And so I may say to you, Mike, as an example, it's a nice day out, eh? That sounds completely different than, what a nice day out, eh? Yeah. And so you have to look for that. I'm just use this silly, cheesy, simple example. But as your team is, one, you need to be aware of it as you communicate, but your job as a coach is to listen. And so you need to look for reactions from your team as you're asking questions. If they say, yeah, and put their eyes down and shrug their shoulders, they're not really on board. They're telling you what you want to hear, and they want it to move forward. Well, that's a coaching opportunity. Okay, I appreciate you having my support, but I'm reading something in your body's language that tells me you want to talk a little bit more about this. Now, talk to me. Tell me why you were on board, because you got to be honest. I'm not sensing it. I'm sensing. Well, Mark, it's this, right? And those are the clues you uncover as you look for nonverbal clues.
How important is one of the things, Mark, that I find in interviewing is vulnerability. When you say nonverbal clues, this doesn't really fit in here, but to be a little vulnerable in terms of, say, referencing your own career, referencing your own personal experiences, in terms of that conversation, how powerful is that?
Yeah, I think it's really important that people understand who you are and where you've been in the journey, and so they can identify connection points, and that's your vulnerability, right? And all the way through your career, you got to be able to say, I don't know. Like, I'm either going to go find out. Like I tell in all my sales trainings, if you don't know the answer, acknowledge it for the client. Give them a deadline of when you're going to come back with the information, and come back and don't lose that confidence. That's vulnerability to look in front of a client and say, oh, geez, I've never got that question before. I'm going to fluff it. No, I'm going to go out and I'm going to gain your trust by you seeing that I respect you enough to say, geez, I don't know. I haven't been through that before. Let me go check that out and get back to you. It's the same thing with leadership. You got to be able to say, God, you're asking me a really great question about engineering that, quite frankly, I don't know. I know I'm the president of the company and I'm accountable for everything, but boy, I'm not an engineer by trade. Can you just hang tight till the next one-on-one? I'm going to write a note that I'm going to get you an answer by then, and I'm going to go check with our engineering team to get an answer on that question. A lot of leaders are afraid to do that. They think they have to know everything, and people know that you don't. And it's such a connecting point to say, I'm with you. We're both going to be learning till the day we're off the face of this earth. Here's an example of an area that I have to learn. And being vulnerable to communicate that, I think, is really important. What it does is it opens up the other person to make them more comfortable saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what you want out of someone you coach. You want them to say, Mark, do you want to know why I'm not hitting my average sale? You know, in your training, I didn't pay attention to that part. I missed those behaviors. Or I'm struggling on asking open-ended questions, and I know you're so passionate about it, and I'm afraid to let you down, but I don't do it well. Can we talk about it again? That's going to come out of them seeing me go, oh, yeah, I got to tell you, I was in a meeting with the board. Oh, boy, did I screw that up. Let me tell you, right? And what it does is the leader who actually lacks confidence won't go there. And it shuts down their people because they're going to demonstrate the behavior they see. You're a perfectionist, you always know, so I better always be right. But you can't help them grow, and you can't help the organization grow if you don't close those gaps that are underneath all that lack of confidence and transparency. That's a big belief of mine. I'm glad you asked that question.
Specific behavior-based feedback with the value-added statements create buy-in and get what's expected repeated. Speaking about that.
Yeah, so again, on that whole funnel is some leaders don't even have communication. Then you go further down the funnel, and some people say, "Hey, good job, buddy. Keep it up, pal." And some leaders say, "Hey, good job. You hit your sales number this week. That's really awesome." And some leaders say, "Listen, you had a fantastic week in sales. I was in your sales center on Saturday, and I watched you greet every single client within 60 seconds. And I watched you use nothing but open-ended questions to determine the customer's needs the entire day. And what that did, as I observed the customer's behavior, is they opened up to you, they trusted you, they asked more questions that you needed, and you were really good about advocating where our boomerang facts were as an organization, where we're different. I think that's helping you close more sales. I want you to know why that's so important. Our customers are getting what they want. You're having a great commission week, and that's going to let us grow. So thank you for that." That is specific, value-based, behavior-based, value-added feedback. The fact that you're saying good week in sales is already ahead of like 50 to 60% of people out there. The fact that you're saying good job, buddy, is better than 10 or 20% out of there, and most aren't giving feedback to their team at all. So you want to get down that funnel, and you want to give feedback in the manner that I just shared. Those are the things, and the reason that's so critical to me, Mike, is it's not about the leader being really good and taking the time to be specific and tell that story. It's about the team member going, ah, I get it. That's what you need me to continue to do, and it brings value. I got your back. I'm on it. That's what I need to do to be successful. That's what has an impact on the customer and me and the company. That's how I need to behave. I got it. That's what it's about. Not about the leader being a great coach.
Well, I think that I also think it's telling the person that the leader is watching. The leader is completely 100% engaged.
Right. And so here the question becomes, how do I give you that feedback when you've had a good week and I wasn't there?
Yeah.
Well, that's where your one-on-one looks like, hey, what a tremendous week. You crushed. Not only did you hit your sales, you hit all 4 of your key performance indicators. Talk to me about how you're doing that. Oh, well, Mark, I don't know. I'm having a good week. No, come on now. Talk to me, like specifically, what's working for you? What are you seeing people react well to? Well, you know what? I think, I'm not just bringing out the floor plans right away. I keep going back to construction because it's the most recent experience. I'm forcing myself to ask some lifestyle questions before I even get to a floor plan. And what it's doing, it's actually allowing me to get to the proper floor plan quicker, and I'm getting less objections. That's it, Gina. That's it, George. That's exactly the behaviors that allow you to be successful. And it's stuff we get back in our customer service survey all the time from customers who enjoy the sales experience. Guess what happens when you have a great week and you hit your numbers? You're tracking to your 30% bonus. Right? So that experience can still live in a one-on-one. You got to be really good at what I talked about earlier about inquiry versus advocacy. But yes, when you see it live during the game, recognize the behaviors. I don't know Nick Nurse, and I keep using him as an example, but I can't imagine when they were winning, he kept going back to Kawhi and Kyle and saying, good job in getting all those points. That's not.
Yeah, he might have been talking about the pick and roll or.
Yeah, he may have been saying, listen, man, you're getting to the foul line. I got to tell you, that's coming off your first step with the ball. Stay aggressive, stay focused on the hoop. We don't need the three-pointer right now. You're accumulating the points in the paint, and they can't defend. I'm clearly a casual general basketball, but it's behavior-based. I saw it, do it. It's causing the result. Thank you. This is where it helps.
Don't coach the scoreboard. It just lets you know where you stand. KPIs are critical to the scoreboard, but they help you to focus on the behaviors to change result. Coach the behaviors, not the score. We're sort of talking about that. How is this a specific point on its own? Yeah,
this is where I kind of segue to this is like, managers will put, or directors or VPs or presidents, they'll put key performance indicators in their one-on-one. So they talk about the metrics causing the result. They have to look at that like a sports scoreboard. That's the score. There it is. Great. Okay, now we got to talk about the behaviors that are causing that score. And what coaches, some will do, even if they have KPIs, they'll be like, well, you missed average sale. Go improve it next week. Like you're below the company average. Let's go. Well, no, hold on a second. You were trained on behaviors on average sale. Tell me which ones you're struggling with right now. Where can I help? It's the same way a sports coach comes in. It would be like Sheldon Keefe now at an intermission coming into the dressing room, crossing his arms and saying, we're down 3-2, go score a goal. No, he comes in the dressing room and he has a quick chat with the video guy, comes into the room, addresses with the team, probably pulls a couple players into the office, seen something specific in their behaviors, come back and then says, guys, we are not getting back on the back check. They are going to get a fourth on us, and let alone a third, if we don't come back and protect their own end. And then when we're coming out on the power play, we can't seem to get through the blue line without dumping it immediately, and we're not winning the puck possession in the corner. So what I want you to do is I want you to come in hard, drop it back to the defenseman, let them carry it over line, gain the zone. I'm using, again, silly examples, but that's so applicable to business. But what leaders do is they're like, look, it's 3-2, you're bad, go fix. Instead of saying it's 3-2 and here's how you change the score and here's what I've observed, what are your thoughts? So always coach the behavior, not the KPI.
Man, my stupid battery in this thing is almost out.
I'm recording. You know me. And I'm going to post the video.
Good. Okay, then you'll send it to me. So I won't worry about my battery then, okay?
Yeah, we're good.
People are going to go, this guy is supposed to be a pro. Can't even get a battery straight. Okay, look.
I'm not tagging Mike Ulmer on this one. I won't expose you. I just did. I think I just did.
Oh my God. If someone listened to me interview people, they'd be mortified. Absolutely mortified.
This is what you did for a living?
You're fumbling and
You
your
are,
battery's not working and your questions are ill-informed and all part of the master plan.
yeah, get me talking.
Columbo is the greatest interviewer ever. Remember Columbo on television? He always had a way of making the person he was speaking to feel that they were smarter than he was. And that's one of the goals of the interview. You want to make the person feel like they're teaching you something, which they clearly are. But that means sacrificing your ego. And the way he did it, of course, was always searching for his pencil and his pen and feeling disheveled, seeming disheveled. But in fact, what he was just doing is making the person feel smarter than he was, when in fact, they weren't. But you are. Look forward and back. What happened last week? What did I miss that was great? Where can I help you with a learning opportunity out of our last week? What's coming up this week? And where you need some support, resources, or dialogue to set you up for success? Support requests for next week. What you need from me? What do I need from you? You're a little redundant here, but I think I'm getting what you're saying.
Well, because it is redundant and great observation. So, my one-on-one's broken into 5 very specific areas. And the first 2 are last week and this week. And those are very specific about, hey, tell me what happened. What did I miss? Because if you did anything great, I want to make sure I hear the story and we recognize it in case it needs to get in a performance review. Or conversely, I need to understand the behavior so I can confirm for you that it's working and validate it so you continue it. Or you're going to tell me some gaps and where you fell down, and we're going to talk about how maybe I can help or guide you to the solution. Excuse me. So that's last week. But it's very update-ish that opens up a conversation. And then this week is, hey, what's on your radar? Because you and I might not see each other again for 5 business days, that you want to ask for some proactive support now, or you want to take me through a plan, you're looking for some validation, you're looking for some feedback, you may be looking for some resources, you may be looking for help in prioritization, you may need my empowerment with someone I report to or laterally to help you get something accomplished, but it's how do I help you with the next 7 days to avoid the problem before it shows up. Then I go through, I know we're going to get the area of opportunity recognition, but then again, I go back to, here's what I need from you, here's what you need from me, and some of it could be relative to what we learned last week or what's on the go. So it is a little bit redundant, but the section we're talking about right now is specifically about the tasks and the learning opportunity and recognition and area of opportunity came out of last week, and the task coming up and where I can support you proactively in the next week.
Highlight recognition or deficiencies for the last week that you want to call attention now, and remember for performance reviews at year end. How is this different from 7?
Yeah, so this one to me is like, leaders seem to get trapped with 2 things. One, we recognize stuff that, this is going to sound harsh from the guy who's writing a book on servant leadership, but you're not getting a pat on the back from me for showing up for work.
Yeah.
And so we've got to start thinking about recognition in areas of opportunity, which are development opportunities, in the context of above and beyond. Because when I write your yearly performance review 52 weeks from now, Mike, and what I don't want to do is talk too much about performance review because it's one of the anchors we're going to talk about, but the chances are the only thing I'm going to write about are what I remember the last 4 to 6 weeks. Whereas if you have this box in your discipline every week, and the rule is, hey, what gets recognized here is the above and the beyond. Not you showed up, not you did your task, not you did your job description, but you went above and beyond and it created a measurable result for the company, learning opportunity for you, but is something we weren't expecting or it was part of your role and you over-delivered. If I have one of those every month, I've got 12 pieces of feedback at the performance review. That's a lot, specifically to say, here's why you were great this year. But if I got one of those every couple months, I've got a very specific story when I'm writing my performance review that you're going to look at me as the person receiving the review and go, man, this guy doesn't forget about a thing. He's got my back. And conversely, if it's an area of opportunity, i.e. a deficiency where you got to close it and you don't, and we talk about it and it's on your one-on-ones for 4 months leading into the review, guess what a development opportunity is going to look like on your performance review. And then you, as the person who works with me, you're not going to be a deer in the headlight. You're going to go, because the way I'm going to position in the review is, as we talked about in October 11th and November 13th and December 8th, we're consistently struggling with your communication with clients. You need to correct this behavior next year. It's the reason really your performance rating has dropped. That's all baked. There's no argument. And I'm going into that review going, he's going to call me on this. And that's why it's so important that that's in your weekly discipline. It doesn't mean it goes in there every week. It's going to be the above and beyond. Just like you don't beat someone up in the area of opportunity if it's really a minor detail and it's not a consistent behavior. Does that make sense?
It's perfect sense.
Cool. It makes your performance reviews easy, let alone the value it adds in the moment where the employee goes, wow, they really recognize that I went above and beyond. Or they go, oh boy, that's getting in the area of opportunity. Mark doesn't write that in that box too often, so I got to get my shit together and fix this.
The art of paraphrasing. Stop each section, ask the team member what they heard, close the gaps, keep each other on the same page, and accountable.
Right, so you finish a one-on-one, and the employee may or may not take notes, and they leave your office, and you say, you got everything? Yeah, I got everything. Okay, see you next week. And they come back the next week, and they've got 3 other things that you kept notes down for that aren't done, that they agreed to do. Or conversely, you said, oh, yeah, I'll talk to the CEO and I'll see if we can change that process. And it didn't get done. The reason that usually gets done is there's no paraphrasing and there's no buy-in. I preach this in sales. Like when you ask a customer an open-ended question and they give you an answer, repeat back to them exactly what you heard so you make sure you're on the same page. It makes it easier to close your sale because they told you what's important to them. So if I heard you right, you've bought a new home before, and one of the biggest headaches you had was trying to find someone after the fact once you got your keys. Did I hear that correct? Yeah. Well, as you know, we have an industry-leading after-sales service program that's won 6 Tarion Awards. So I know I can put you at ease with that. Do you agree? And so you're getting the customer to buy into the transaction all the way along. You're doing the same thing with an employee. Hey, what'd you hear this week now that we're done our one-on-one? What are the major things you got to work on? Oh, well, you asked me to do this, this, and this. Yep. Oh, don't forget, I think you missed this point. What are we doing for April 11th? Oh, yeah, right. You need that report in. I got you. Okay. And now you've paraphrased back. They've paraphrased back to you what they heard in the one-on-one. And if you've got any gaps that they're leaving the office that weren't what they agreed upon on paper, you're addressing them. So you're on the same page leaving that one-on-one. That's the art of paraphrasing, and it's critical.
Finally, the open forum, the player's agenda. What do they want to talk about? Not mentioned yet. Pen up or pen down. Now you've got my attention. What does that mean?
Yeah, so like you're on this agenda of development that you believe as a servant leader is in the interest of the employee, in the interest of the company, in the interest of the customer. And you've got this process, and you go through these first 4 boxes. It says, what'd you do last week? What'd you do this week? Where do I help? Here's what you did really well. Hey, what do you need from me? What do I need from you in the next 7 days? And you've got all that documented. Well, what if the employee wants to talk to you about something? What if something's going on with one of their peers that they really think needs to be brought up with leadership? Or what if there's a process that's impacting a customer negatively that they're not necessarily accountable for, so it won't come on one-on-one, but they know it might change the outcourse of the business. And so this is their opportunity for them to give you your feedback. And where I say pen up or pen down is twofold. Well, clearly it's twofold because there's 2 options. But I always ask the employee, hey, is this confidential? Because if it is, this is your time. The pen goes down. I document nothing. Let's talk. Get it off your chest. Or is this a pen up and I'm going to write? And you need to hold me accountable to something you're going to be asking for. Am I going to be on the hook to do something with your feedback? Is there going to be an ask? Because if there is, I need to document this. And I give the employee the opportunity to have a pen up or pen down moment, and it's their agenda, not mine. The stuff that changes organizations lives in the open forum.
Perfect. Okay. We've gone 34 minutes, and that's perfect. That is absolutely perfect. I know we were talking about doing more than one of these, but if you don't mind, I'm going to start. I'm getting a little bit of a backlog of work now. I'm going to take these and start transcribing them as I happen, actually. Send this one to transcribe and start actually sort of using these to shape a little bit more of the regular content we're putting out in terms of, I don't know what you call those things, there's social media posts or whatever. I'm going to make them a little bit more specific as we go on to what you're actually like pen up and pen down, for example, is a great example of stuff that's a bit more specific to the content of the book. So I'm still going to give a lot of stuff like you saw before, and I'm going to do the right hashtag and the right
the right handle, yeah.
Yeah, the right handles. And then we're going to move a little bit more as time goes into more specific stuff like pen up and pen down. So we are charging forward, my friend. This book is going to be done, laid out and ready to go with My Great Hope at the end of January. The soft launch and certainly for mid-February, which is our deadline.
Okay.
So really, we have you and I have like 3 more conversations like this, half-an-hour conversations,
yeah.
And then we're going to go over the holes in the book, and then we're going to get this thing done.
Okay, so let me practice my paraphrasing skill.
Yeah.
So if I heard you right, we're both on the same page that we still have 3 anchors to go through?
Correct.
If I heard you right, you want to take away what we did tonight because it's going to add a little more specific content to our social media kind of drip strategy of what the book's about.
Also correct.
You still think end of January is reasonable, which tells me, which by the way, Mike, I'm on no accelerated timeline. So if it takes a few more weeks,
I get that.
I don't care. Are you writing as we go right now, or are you literally still kind of constructing the guts?
Yeah, interesting. No, so these conversations will be almost verbatim, Mark.
Okay.
Because you express it so as we said, different columns, each one with 10 in it. So it's really just filling up a page with this content. So this part is going to be very, very true to what you're saying. And the book as a whole is going to be much, much more true to what you're saying than, say, somebody else who I need to fill in on.
Right.
You're finished work, right? You're extraordinarily savvy, well polished, and you really nail what it is you believe. And so there's no need for me to get in between that.
Cool, because I'm really glad you said that, actually, because there's a reason I wanted the book. There's a message I wanted to get delivered. And I worry sometimes because I love to talk. Here I am preaching, the value of listening, and I really believe I do a good job when I'm coaching an employee. But I'm so passionate about this subject that I sometimes worry that I'm getting too far off, and I'm hoping that we're anchoring back, which is why I love that you brought up, like, okay, well, what's the guts, and can you give me some examples of those? And it led me to, okay, the 5 anchors, the 10 behaviors, the 5 anchors, the 10 behaviors. Now we can craft the story around those, right?
Yeah.
And the examples and stuff. And I don't know how you're going to work your magic around that, because my ideal state, if I'm being honest, is people read that book and go, oh, that's what he's about. That's his life story.
Yeah.
And there's some cool little tidbits in there, but here's how it applies to me. And even if it doesn't connect with me, boy, the operational piece, the advice, the anchors and the behaviors, I can really relate to those. I can take that, like, that's my ideal state. My ideal state is I take the reader through the first step of the journey and go, oh man, the guy was a trailer park boy. Like, he literally, his first home was the trailer park of the Trailer Park Boys. Like, and he learned, the people side from his mom and the discipline from his dad. And he had this brother that believed in work ethic, and he had this other brother believed in loving what he did, and 2 other great brothers. And here's how that crafted his, and he had these experiences with these great leaders. And here that's how crafted how he thinks while allowing him to be himself. And oh my God, I see what he does. And wow, the first book that actually tells me how to do servant leadership. Doesn't philosophize about it. Philosophize, I just made that up. Isn't philosophical, don't put that on one of the images. Isn't philosophical about it. Like, literally tells me how to set me up to perform that style. And by the end of this journey, I want to try it. That's my ideal reader that goes from, like, that really connects with the book. But I'm hoping even if they read a little bit of my story and they're like, yeah, not my path. Oh, but boy, those anchors and behaviors, that's what I've been waiting for someone to tell me how to do this friggin' develop your people first approach, right? So like I love that I guess I'm a long-winded say of like, I think we said this a couple weeks ago. Man, I think we're there. Like
Yeah,
I just can't wait to see you do your thing and what it looks like when we're all there.
yeah. The book isn't written, but the book is pretty well done.
Yeah, right. I'm feeling that.
Yeah, no,
Like
it's,
compared to 6 weeks ago, like I'm feeling so much clarity of like, if you would ask me when we started, is this what I wanted the story to say? You're fucking right,
yeah.
I did. Like I'm pretty happy of where we're at.
Oh, I'm delighted too. I think this format that I've sort of stumbled upon and that I'm exercising and that you were kind enough to let me, go with your project on is the best of all worlds, because there's a part, so that the narrative of your life is very clearly delineated into, it's going to be 5 different spots because we have 5 different parts of the book.
Right.
And so there'll be a tangential sort of connection, to them. But so what we're saying to the reader is this book is going to be entertaining, and there's going to be tons of, and you're going to understand this guy and where he's coming from. But if you don't care and all you want is a blueprint for what servant leadership is, then we can do that too.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what it is. That's the strength of the format, is that it allows the reader to go back. If they want the whole cake, they can have the entire cake. But if they just want the part that they can implement, then that's really easy to separate because there's 50 little pieces.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I'm clearly not reading enough books because I don't think it's as unique as I feel like it is, but it's resonating with me, Mike. What you said is like, I've told you about, Simon Sinek, John Maxwell, Noel Tichy, that Richard made me read The Leadership Engine, and all those books really resonated with me. But I still struggle to find one that said, okay, now that you believe in this, if this is at your core, here's physically how you to take it to work every month and implement it.
Right, and that's really your strength. That's why that's your strength. You're an operations guy at heart. You're not a storyteller. You're an operations guy, and that's really in your DNA. And as such, then, an operations guy, what's the most important thing an operations guy does? Well, he formalizes procedures to make sure that they work.
Yeah, it's so funny because funny you're saying that, because I would have told you before this journey that those two things repel from me in operations. Like, and I shouldn't say operations because I've really always done operations, whether it's sales operations, stadium operations, marketing, but process has always been my thing of process. Like, let's just inspire some people and give them the skills to succeed and measure it and improve the journey. But really, that's what I've been defining as a leadership process, a servant leadership process. John Maxwell's 5 levels of leaderships to this day still blow me away because I bring them up in my training, Mike, and people can go, oh, I am level 1. Oh, I am level 2. Oh boy, I really aspire to be 3 or 4. And oh my God, who's 5? And I thought I was 5 coming into this. This was back at TELUS when Jackie Fu and Lisa Larter were talking this language. And I'm like, would you stop talking about levels and just go out and help people succeed? But meanwhile, they were decades ahead of me. And where I'm going with that is, even in 2 decades, no one's come along and said, well, here's some anchors to put in place to do that.
Yeah.
Like, here's specifically how you do it every week, every month, every quarter, and every year. Now, I'm not suggesting my 5 anchors are the be-all, end-all. And my 5 anchors come from learning from other people in dribs and drabs. And okay, now this is going to be my process. But I'm thinking, I don't know that book. Like, I still don't know that book that says, here's your playbook for servant leadership. Take it away. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. I don't know. But I do know it's me. This is friggin' awesome.
Well, so you're a dream client. I got to tell you, you're a dream client because you're so enthusiastic.
Because I pay on time.
There is that. But the other thing is that really you're just a very enthusiastic engineer.
Oh, God. I'll take the enthusiastic. I don't know if you can put engineer anywhere near my name.
Well, it's because really that's really what you do is you're an engineer. You're just at heart you're an engineer, not really, but when I say you're a process guy, that's also what I mean. You're an engineer. You're a how-to guy, not but you have enough of the why to make your message impactful. But your value isn't why. Your value is how.
Yeah, and I, God, I'd like to think that that comes from who, right? Like it's always like I look at I can't believe I just said that. When I was leading the team at BMO Field,
Yeah.
I had never seen a Gantt chart in my life, Mike. I didn't know what that was. Like I didn't,
Yeah.
all these sliding bars on an Excel, like what do they all mean? And Bob Hunter held my hand and he's like, no, this is, okay, but Mark, here's what it is you got to go kind of get Michael Doyle on board and get him to stay within the food and beverage budget. And you got to work with Tim, who's going to be your guy actually operating at the stadium. And then you got to work with Brad to get the menu items through Michael. And they got to figure out your margins, and they got to, and then you got to work with corporate partnerships to get a beer partner. And then, oh my God, we've got to pick like a cleaning group, and that's going to be done by this date. Oh, and then you got to do FF&E. And I guess where I'm going with all of this is like, yeah, I certainly became focused on that because I want to see people be successful, including myself, to be very transparent.
Sure.
But I never looked at the Gantt chart so much as like, oh my God, that's task number one. It was, okay, how do I get the person who's accountable for task number one on board? What do I need to give them to make them successful? How do we get that, how do I understand that person so they deliver that metric and they feel good about it and so do I, so we can move on to step 2 of the stadium opening. And it's like, I guess I'm going on about this is because I never thought I was a process project manager operations guy. And I'm having this aha moment of, no shit, I just came from it of the angle of people. And again, I go back to, that's what this friggin' book is about.
Well, see, that's the thing. That's exactly it. It's
now I've had one full glass of wine, Mike. Let's keep that in mind.
When I say you're an engineer, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a slide rule. It's calibrations of the human dynamic as well as the application of that to the task, right? That's the thing. So you have to. It's a little bit of art, and a little bit of science, right? Because it's engineered, as you say, it's a Gantt chart, but it's also a gut chart as well. But that is your thing. How to is your how-to guide, which is a fantastic facility when it's paired with a vision, a different vision. So it's great to say, and I think a lot of business books make this mistake. I mean, I read Simon Sinek's book, and I read Start With, and that's great, but he doesn't tell me how to do it.
Right.
The closest person I think that is Your Story. What's the guy named? Your Story. He's got a whole system, and I don't like his system at all. But at least he gives you a workbook and a plan and a thing. That's the problem with visionaries. Their nose is up in the air, and then they don't engineer it for you. I mean, what's the point of having this great theory if you can't apply it on a local level?
Yeah, I think, in fairness to, those authors, I don't think their desired state going in was to show people. It was to build awareness.
So why? So that's just a wank. That's just masturbation. That's just what I know. I mean, you're not going to tell people how to do it. Shut up.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with you there. Just because, at least John Maxwell's book, if you read it or you sit in a training where someone tells you about it, it forces awareness. Oh shit, I'm level 1. People are only following me because I have a title, not because they're really inspired by me. Oh boy.
Okay.
Level 3 is where people, they really want to follow me and they see the value in it for them, and I inspire them, and I'm going to help them grow, and we're going to develop more leaders at level 4. And level 5, that now makes me aware of the gap. He doesn't tell you how to fill it. But I don't think he went into that book. I can't speak for John Maxwell, obviously, but I don't think he went into that book saying, I'm going to show you how to do a one-on-one, a professional development strategy, a performance review, coaching during the game, all those things I'm talking about. He went into the book saying, listen, you need to know where you're at, and you need to know where your people want you to be at. and this is what it looks like. And I think he accomplished that brilliantly. I think Simon Sinek takes us a little bit more behind the science of all of it. But again, I keep going back, and I don't critique those guys. I think they've created a tremendous amount of awareness around servant leadership. But man, why aren't people telling people at least how to get started?
What the meeting looks like, what are the steps? You know what you should start thinking about doing, Mark, is corresponding material. So to create
have it all. Have it all.
Great.
Got it all. Now, what do I want to reveal it in the book and completely damage my entire consulting business? I'm not sure I'm there yet.
Oh, I think that the thing is, the more the better. But that's up to you. But okay, so listen, you have to cut this conversation after the interview ends because we're both dead.
Yeah.
If you don't.
Yeah. No, I'm going to send it to you in full, and I'll figure out how to edit a couple of the more controversial parts of this.
Okay. Actually, my battery held on, so I should be fine. So no need to send it, but I should be fine. But now I'll get back to you.
Okay, I'll save it, and again, I'll play with it tomorrow, and if I can edit it in a manner where it still comes through, I will. But yeah, there's a couple of pieces hey, we are writing a book. We get to have our one-on-one moments too. We'll leave those for ourselves.
I absolutely agree with you. And this is it's funny because a lot of the stuff that's showing up on those, to kind of take it back to the things, the pieces that I'm making, are from these parts of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is interesting to me. It's not stuff that so my process is I go through the book, but what I do is look for a great image first, and then think about stuff that we've talked about, whether it's applicable or not. It's a kind of a weird process, but a lot of that stuff, as I said, is coming from the conversation instead of the quote off the record part of our conversations. Got
it. I got to tell you, Mike, the only thing that's creating anxiety for me right now, because I love the process. I love how we're getting there. I would tell you if I didn't. I'm really worried about the publishing side.
Well, tell me about that.
Well, because I don't know how to do it. And I'm I honestly, like, and I shouldn't be intimidated because it's how I figure everything out. I get to a point where I got to address it, figure the skill out, research it, end up learning the skill and adapting it. But I'm worried about the time to do that. Like, God, do we know anybody who can take this book when you're done? I review it, I give you feedback, we make corrections and say, can you just go put this online for me and make it available for print and tell me what I need to make in an audiobook and just make that happen for me. Like I'm really, because I started to research it, and it's like, not to slag Amazon, but it's like any company. They're like, oh, want to learn how to self-publish? Click here. And there's like 11 pages and you're trying to follow along. Like, can't someone just tell me, send us your file and we'll do the work, and we'll suggest a price after we figure out how much it's going to cost to print, but leave all of that to us. Like, I need to find someone who's good at that, so we can give them a finished book and say, make it available to people, including myself.
So here's where I would, to you, I know how much this is vexing you, but never mind the Amazon stuff. Just go online and say how to publish a book on Amazon, and look at the stuff not from Amazon.
But I did, Mike. That's what I'm telling you. It's giving me.
It's still leaving you. All right, let me wrestle with that.
I just I know where I'm strong, and I know where I have gaps, and this is one of them. Here's a process that I've never done before, and I do want to learn it, but I'm honestly afraid of making a mistake. And I'm afraid of it taking too long. And quite frankly, I'm afraid of wasting a ton of money doing it the wrong way. Like, I wish I just had, like, the process you're taking me through to write the book. Man, I'm finding so much value for my dollar. And I'm not just blowing sunshine up your ass. Like, I'm like, okay, I get to sit here and talk. I get to tell him what I'm passionate about. I get to explain my process. I get him to tell him about my story. He's grasping it. He's doing cool stuff that's creating some excitement. He's doing his thing. And then, I have the conversation with a couple of PR people, and I'm like, okay, I'm in good hands. They know how to do their thing, because I've decided to take it from just for my clients to maybe having a little more impact. So let's get it out there. And then I talk to Emma Rogers at the Children's Foundation here in Guelph, and it's a quick conversation. I'm like, listen, I'm thinking of taking some of the proceeds and doing something impactful locally. How would that work? And she's like, Mark, no problem. 2 messages. When you're ready, tell us. I am not feeling that at all about getting this fucking book printed and making it easy. So like, we just have to sit back and let people order it.
Well,
It's keeping me up at night, and very few things keep me up at night other than when the Habs are going to call to make me their president.
well, that would be a nice. You know what? That's an aspiration right there. I'm gonna actually do. Have you ever seen Love Actually?
Oh, have I seen it? We've already seen it 3 times this season.
Well, what I'm gonna do, my it's so my neighbor across the way is a big Habs fan.
Smart neighbor.
Because you know, it's kind of the Christmas season, and because we can't go actually visit each other, I'm not going to recreate the Love Actually thing. But at the end, I'm going to say, I just want to tell you how much your team sucks.
That's not very nice.
Look, Mark, I've looked into this, and I will look into this, but I want to set you at ease. This is I'm not really that much more conversant in this than you are, but there's a lot stupider people than me that have done this. And
that's the story of my life. But I am not feeling that right now, so I'm anxious, right? Just being transparent.
I got a guy that's publishing a second book, and he's described me in great terms, the Amazon experience, and really, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. All we need to do is have a print-ready book for them. They have this machine already ready to go. The pricing is going to be up to us, but we can do this, man.
Yeah, I mean, again,
that's the least of your concerns.
All I want to do, hey, listen, man, if we can get back the money it costs to create this book, God bless. And everything above and beyond goes to the Children's Foundation in Guelph. I'm a happy camper. So it's really not about the money, it's about the reach. And again, I'm an anxious guy, right? Like when I get into situations like this where I'm going, okay, you know, our last call, you said, hey, go research it. And I went and researched it, and I consider myself the type of guy who's a generalist other than leadership and sales. Like I can generally grasp something, get a hold of it, maybe not do it better than everybody else, but get through it. It's kind of the story of my sports career. I could play every sport and be on every team, but I was never the best player on any of those teams. But I was a multi-sport guy because I can figure it out. And I left that experience going, okay, I get it, but like, oh my God, this is tedious. And, oh, can I not just find someone who can take the book and do all this for me? And I'm